All right, everybody. Welcome to this podcast. If you are a giver, if you like to give to other people and you find yourself tired a lot, this podcast is for you. How do you give and continue to give of yourself without feeling tired all the time, without feeling like people are taking advantage of you, without feeling like you're not being noticed by your coworkers, your boss, or your significant other? If you would like to know more about how to continue to be who you are authentically without burning out, this podcast is for you. You are the good one, the rule follower, the peacekeeper, always putting others first, just like they taught you. But those good behaviors weren't preparing you for success. They were training you for compliance. If you're exhausted from always putting others first and managing everyone's emotions while your dreams take a back seat, what if I told you that that's the same emotional intelligence that is your untapped superpower? Hi, I'm Rico Armstrong, and this is the podcast that helps you break free from the people-pleasing compliance trap and master the hidden language of influence and leadership that transforms your dream career and relationships into reality. Okay, if you're still here, I'm assuming you are a giving person, and I can relate to that as somebody who loves to give. I was trained to give this way. It's a rewarding feeling that you have, and some of you, I don't know, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a mother or a father who loves to give to your family. You're a caregiver of some kind. You are a teacher. You are a coach. You are a manager. You are some sort of leader. And if you are a real leader, it requires you to give. And that's why, as a teacher, as a parent, as a coach, as a mentor, we are all included in that. If you are the type of person that is willing to go out of your way at a moment's notice for people that you really care about, this is a beautiful and attractive quality that comes at a cost. And the reason why it comes at a cost is because at times people rely on you so much that they sometimes forget to be aware of how you may be feeling. Right? If somebody's always coming to you for help, for that pick-me-up, then where do you get your help from? If you are so fortunate to be a part of a loving family or have a loving spouse who understands you and can fill your cup up, so to speak, you are very fortunate in this life, because that is something everybody craves and not everybody has. And coming from a person who was raised to give, people like us are often called people pleasers. And maybe from time to time you have identified and said that out loud, that you are a people pleaser. As a man or a woman or whoever, you give until you're burnt out. And I don't know if you're like me, but when I'm burnt out, I tend to not want to be around anybody. And I personally will shut down, because the last thing that I need is more stimulation from a bunch of people. Now, that might be because I'm an ambivert that leans more to the introverted side. That might have something to do with it. But nonetheless, whenever I feel like my cup has been filled and whenever I don't feel like my energy is drained, I am definitely more extroverted. I'm more inclined to want to hang out with my friends and want to hang out with other people. And so that's why, if this sounds like you, where you give, but then you're not getting your cup filled up, what do you do about it? One of the things that I've learned, and this seems to me to be like a universal law, that when we violate this law, we have consequences. One of those consequences is feeling burnt out and drained because we keep giving so much without getting that back in return to the level that we need in the moment. And the universal law that I have found is that when we do not set healthy boundaries for our energy, for your energy, and for your time, if we don't help have those boundaries and stick to those boundaries, that's the reason why we get burnt out. And what's worse is that when we violate this concrete principle and we get burnt out as people pleasers and givers and leaders, sometimes we do one of two things. We will either blame the people around us for not giving us what we need, even though we may not have clearly said what we need, even if we were the ones that allowed them to walk other people to quote unquote walk over us or take advantage of us. Even if we allow that, we become so hurt or so drained or so tired or so angry that instead of looking at what we did or did not do to cause the situation, we might blame other people. And it's understandable. The second thing we might do is the complete opposite and blame ourselves and guilt ourselves and shame ourselves so much that it becomes a reason why we shut people out. Neither one of those options is extremely healthy, even if it's understandable. You know, if you're the second option where you tend to blame yourself, I would bet that growing up, you learned how to protect your emotions by shutting people out, by trying to not show weakness. And again, when we do those things, how do we really help ourselves or allow other people to help us where we need it if we are burnt out and haven't communicated healthy boundaries, we haven't stuck to those boundaries, and when we need help the most, we shut down. It's very difficult to recover or get the help we need if any of those factors are at place, and it all stems from healthy boundaries. Now, this is not the first time. I'm sure you have heard of this before. Everybody says healthy boundaries, but what nobody really talks about that much is how do you set healthy boundaries and what constitutes a healthy boundary? What is a boundary? And a boundary is not something like a punishment that you give to somebody for violating it. That's not the intention. The intention is this is something you will do, regardless of the other person. This is what you will do to protect yourself from a toxic situation or environment or something that's not healthy for you. Hey guys, real quick, I am sure that all of us have had the moments where we're a little nervous or afraid to talk to somebody because we don't know how they're going to respond. Are we going to be able to talk to our life partner without them getting upset? Or are we going to talk to our boss to get that raise or that interview for that job? If we ever get nervous in those moments, we have to fearlessly communicate in a way that's effective to get the things we want and need. And if you want to know how to consistently do that, there's a formula and a program on exactly how to do that. And it's called the Be Fearless and Effective Communicators Program. If you are interested in learning more about that, you can click the link that's in the show notes, or you can go to attractiverelationships.com/fearless. So for example, let's say one of your boundaries is when you're in a conversation with somebody that is emotional or can be a little tense. Let's say one of the boundaries is you don't raise your voice and you don't curse during those moments. Please take this just as an example. Everybody speaks and argues and talks differently, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say that is a boundary. All right. And then let's say somebody's talking to you and they raise their voice and they cuss at you. What do you then do? If you disregard that boundary and then continue to engage in that conversation and the other person continues to cuss at you, that will likely lead to more frustration, you feeling more drained, you feeling more angry, and maybe you reciprocating with raising your voice and cussing back at the other person. And then we might blame the other person for making you that way. Or you could stick to your boundary and not entertain that conversation. You could walk away and say, we can have this conversation later, but we're not going to have this now. Or if you say that again, I'm walking away. And that has more to do about what you are going to do to protect yourself and your emotions and your energy, less about trying to punish the other person or conform them to your way. All right. You can say you can still do whatever you want, but this is what I'm going to do. Right. And that is kind of how boundaries work. And so when you are setting up boundaries, and this is the part, we can't get into it fully here, but I'm going to give you kind of the blueprint, the outline that you may do the work yourself on how to set up healthy boundaries. If you've heard this podcast before, you know I'm a huge, huge fan of identifying your purpose. Because when you know what your purpose, not your goals, but your purpose, the thing that drives you every day, that is like your North Star. That is the thing where everything in your life revolves around pursuing your purpose, and anything that's distracting you or taking you away from your purpose is something you can create a boundary to protect. So that way you can continue to serve, because you reaching out for your purpose fills your cup up. But Rico, I might be disregarding so many other people. Yes, you will also attract the people who are going to be there to fill your cup up, to help you serve your purpose. In addition to that, it is from your purpose, which is, again, universal law. Serve your purpose, you'll be happier. And when you know what your purpose is, you can also outline characteristics and values that are important to you, because they will help serve you and your purpose. But if you don't know your purpose, it's hard to set up your personal values and characteristics that you value most. What will end up happening is we will adopt other people's values because it sounds good, it seems good, but they're not your own. And so it can work to a degree, but it is just so much better if you're willing to do the work to really define and articulate what your purpose is, because that's going to allow you to also dictate your virtues and characteristics that you value. And from there, you create healthy boundaries to protect yourself, to make sure that you are always in that environment that supports your purpose, that shares your common values. And it becomes easier to say no to the things that drain you. Now, if you are overwhelmed because there's just so much to do, this is very common for parents and for very busy people, maybe very ambitious people, like that is a separate thing. It's still connected to some of what we're talking about, but there's a difference between being overwhelmed because you temporarily have too much on your plate versus something that's chronic where you're always tired. You feel like people are overlooking you. You feel like people are mistreating you. You feel like people are not hearing you. That's different than temporary overwhelm. Now, if you've been with me in this podcast, I got some news to share with you. I am going through somewhat of a rebrand, and because of this, and I'm really excited about this actually, because of this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I've spent so much time studying the art of communication and psychology and practicing it in my coaching practice, that what I find is that when there are people like you and I who give so much, that sometimes we get overlooked, undervalued. And even for somebody who's been practicing these things for a long time, because I grew up a certain way to try to serve and try to please, sometimes I fall back into habits that I learned as a child. And it always comes back to kind of bite me in the ass a little bit. And I don't want that to happen for you. I don't want you to be chronically burnt out. I want you to thrive. I don't want you to just survive your day-to-day and survive your career, survive your relationships. I want you to thrive in them. And what I have found is that if you really learn how to lead and how to communicate well, you start to get to the root causes of why certain things are happening in your relationships and in your career. And then they start to improve as you are not misunderstood anymore and you are connected to people at work. You are looked more as an authority, as somebody more respectable and valuable than you already are. And this is the reason why the theme and the whole brand of this podcast is going to change a little bit. It's going to have a new name, and there's also a whole new offer for you if you are interested in breaking free from being misunderstood and you want to be valued in a way that advances your career and changes the relationships in your life. I am going to put a link in the description. If you're listening on a podcast, it'll be in the show notes. If you are watching this video on YouTube or on some other social media platform, I'll have the link. If you want to get in early on a masterclass program on how to do exactly what I had just mentioned, advance your career, advance your relationships, this is going to be for you. And I invite you to check out that link. And there'll be a new website and everything coming later, but this will be kind of like an early bird special for those of you who might be interested. Program starts in January, early January. Thank you guys for listening to this episode, and I will look forward to chatting with you again next time. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, check out our Impact Leaders Circle on our website. And until next time, remember, you weren't taught to communicate, you were taught to comply, but you are more than just a people pleaser. Let's rewrite that script.